Page 3. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, forms supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms atoms in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. Page 15. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perfection. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: How should any son of the lineage train, who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared Tayata, Gate Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharad Vatiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. I prostrate to the gathering of Dakinis in the three chakras, who abide in the holy yoga of using space. By your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanations, look after practitioners like a mother her child. Aka Samara Sashadara Samaraya Pe. Agate, Parasamgate, and Bodhi Soha. By the teachings of the three jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed. May they become non-existent. May they become pacified. May they be completely pacified. May the negative forces opposed to the Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma. May there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here, right now. Page 25, a short mandala. Saji Boki Jug Shug Me Tug Tram Rira Bling Ji Ni Ti Pati Sange Jing Du Make Te Wargi Jokun Nam Dag Jing La Jo Par Shu Je Tun La Madam Pa Ke Nam Jokyu Kala Ken Si Ching Jig Ne Chitar Sampe Do Che Zen Mala Sagi Choki Char Pa Ba Tu So Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kanayatayami Chodang Soki Chognam La Janchu Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chonyangi Pe Sonam Ki Jola Panchi Sange Chu Parshok Chodang Soki Chognam La Janchu Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chonyangi Pe Sonam Ki Jola Panchi Sange Chu Parshok Chodang Soki Chognam La Janchu Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Chonyan Ki Pe Sonam Ki Jola Panchir Sange Drupasho.
Okay. Uh, 전난저 급박까지 you Oh, okay. All right. So, oh, 네, okay. Okay. So, now we've got to first of all, of course, set our motivation. So today, um, being in New Zealand, now you have to experience my like stupid talk, right, which you can't understand. So that's why cookbook. Oh, sign language. Okay, I got it. Cookbook. Okay, sign. So all right, now I get it. I'm like as the translator, I'm like the sign language interpreter for the prime minister, right? The literal word is like stupid. That's why I couldn't really understand. Okay, so anyway, I'm like the sign language interpreter for the prime minister, right? Like the prime minister, when she does her speech, there's the sign language person, right? So that's what I am as the translator today. Right. So yeah, so yeah, you can think of that if it's the same situation when the prime minister's talking, I'm like the sign language interpreter, so people can understand because of course you can't understand directly. Can you not see me? Am I off? Am I off camera? Do you want me? Okay, no, he doesn't want. Well, it doesn't matter to me. Okay, so we'll do motivation meditation. Mhm. Mm. Mm. So well, I've been looking at the definition of form, right, from a Buddhist context, of course. Um, and when we look at the impermanent phenomena, we've got three. We've got form, um, consciousness, and non-associated compositional factors. Um, Kondo Zogtang, Shepatang, Timiduchiro. Yeah, yeah. So sorry, I wrote down the wrong thing, but I translated it right. It's form, consciousness, and non-associated compositional factors. Um, and so we have, it's very important to understand this form because this form is our body, obviously physical form. And we need to understand this. We need to understand how our body works, how our body functions. Because if we don't have this understanding, then there's many difficulties that we won't be able to go beyond. We won't be able to clear. So many difficulties and problems that we have arise from our physical body. So we need to have a clear understanding of that. So we're looking at the definition of cause, and we've looked at the definition and the cause for this form. And we'll also look at the nature of the form and also the divisions of us to help understand it further. Mm. Mhm. So we've looked at how forms established, and we've also looked at the definition of the form. So two definitions came up. So Zugsu Rungwa, I think it's translated in the book as suitable as materiality, and Zugsu Yerpa is existent as materiality. Um, so these are the two definitions of the form. Yeah. Mhm. So we've covered that off. We've looked at these definitions of form, and so now we're going to look at the different divisions of form. Right. That's it. Mm. Okay. So Zugsu Yupa the okay. 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 Existing. So it says here, although there's a slight difference between the two brothers, we're on page 90 now. The two brothers are Vasabandhu and Asanga. So Asanga is the one that stated the definition as suitable as materiality, and Vasabandhu is the one who stated it as existent, sorry, what is capable of materiality, and Vasabandhu is the one that's translated it as what exists as form. Vasa, Zugsurungwa. Okay, so sorry, I may have got that wrong, but I'll repeat it. So Vasabandhu said it's what what is capable of materiality, as it's translated here, and Asanga is what exists as form. Yeah, yeah. Sorry. So just to be clear, Vasabandhu said his definition, what is capable of materiality, and Asanga said that which exists as form. Uh, mhm. Hmm. So when we talk about form, then there is two ways. One division of it is into two parts. So that form which is perceived by the sense powers, and that which is a mental object form, as it's translated here. Oh, okay. So here it's translated as mental object form, but in the Tibetan it's got the kona, which means only, right? So it's only mental object form. Um, so the sense powers being the five ordinary sense powers that like smell, taste, touch, and so forth, and then the mental object is only mental object form. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So mm, there'll be more. We'll go into more detail of these different divisions. It will become clearer. But just to start with the five powers are what we know. The eye power, the eye sense power. Zugi Wambo, Zugi Chichu. Sorry, the um, eye sense consciousness, the sound ear sense consciousness, the nose sense consciousness, tongue, and body sense consciousness. Did I get five? Yeah. So yeah, so we have um, form, which is the eye sense perception, object of the eye sense, so visual form. Then we have sound, taste, tactile, and did I miss odor? Yeah, and odor, smell. So the actual odor. So these five objects of these five sense consciousnesses. Hmm. Mm. Mm. Hmm. So when we talk about these ketsa in Tibetan, which is sense object in English, what determines something as a sense object? Well, if it's uh, like this cup is said to be an object of the eye, as sorry, a visual sense object, right? Because that's the main perception when you see the cup. That it arises to, this cup arises to the visual sense power, and that's its main way it's perceived. And then we have the same for the various other senses, such as smell, hearing. So obviously, sound is the sense object for the ear sense consciousness, or the auditory sense object, and so forth. The same with smell, taste, touch, etc. Mm. So these five objects that are perceived on the basis of these five sense powers. So we have visual object, smell, taste, touch. So that's clear, right? So that first division of the two, is that clear now? Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Mm. Okay. So, so as we go in the book, when it says here, the second category of form, those that are the objects of mental cognition alone, in turn has two kinds: those that are obstructive and those that are non-obstructive. So looking at these first, these obstructive ones, those would be the five sense powers. So we have the visual sense power, the auditory sense power, the smell sense power, the taste sense power, and the tactile sense power. Now, these actually are said to be obstructive because just that they have uh, what we would consider material form, and therefore they actually have obstruction or resistance. So, like in the eye, there's a small um, object, I guess, in there that is considered to be the sense power, and the same with the two ears, the tongue, and so forth. Mhm. Hello, okay. So with the eye sense power, obviously that it is obstructed. It's possible to obstruct it. Like if you put your hands over your eyes, you can't see what's beyond your hands. So when something's very close to the eye, it can't see. Um, However, when things are a bit further away, then it can see them clearly. So that's fairly obvious. Mhm. Okay, that's all. Okay. So when we talk about this non-obstructive mental form, what we're referring to here is the form of a dream, the forms that you perceive in a dream. These are considered to be only mental form, entirely mental form, you could say, and they're also considered to be non-obstructive. So this is an example of this mental form. That's non-obstructive, the second division. Mm, yeah. Okay. Okay. Mm. So, with this unobstructive mental form, there's also many divisions of them. So, one other example would be this concentration meditation you do on non-attachment. So, where this just the whole space is pervaded by skeletons. So, obviously, the space is not actually filled with literal skeletons. However, based on the power of the concentration, then the space becomes filled with the perception of the skeletons, and this is considered this second type of form. So, uh, okay. So also another example would be during the practice of tantra, you have various visualizations such as flowers and so forth. Um, these would also be considered, and the mandala and flowers and so forth. Um, so this would also be considered this type of form, this non-obstructive mental form. So, however, then it goes on to talk about the difference between form and visual material form. Oh, yes. So there is many. Well, there are examples of that which is form, but not visual material form. So what would those be? That'd be smell, sound, tactile, and so forth, right? The other that are form, they're considered form, but they're not visual material form. Uh, yeah. So it goes on to explain it here. Physical form is a term applied in general to all material phenomena, whereas visual material form is a subcategory of physical form. The latter must be understood in terms of visual forms, such as material entities possessing shape and color that are perceived by the eye consciousness. Hence, one must make the distinction that sound, smell, taste, and tactility are material forms, but they are not visual material forms. Okay. Yeah. So I'll just read this out because Geshe read it. Moreover, according to Sanga's Compendium of Abhidharma, one should differentiate between physical form defined in terms of the capacity of materiality and defined in terms of the property of obstruction. What the text refers to as existing as form owing to making physical contact must be understood as referring to obstructive material phenomena. Conversely, that existing as form through imagining the object, such as mental object form, is not compelled to possess the property of obstructive resistance. Therefore, although these forms, such as mental object forms, are characterized as physical, they need to be posited as obstructive. So this is the reason why Asanga had the definition of um, Suksu Yupa existing as form, rather than suitable to be form or suitable to be materiality, because suitable to be materiality requires that it has obstruction, that it's obstructive, like a cup or physical form. However, this is not the case for mental form, mental object form. This mental object form is only perceived by the mind and doesn't have this obstructive aspect. So therefore, this is the reason why Asanga chose the definition of existent as form rather than suitable as materiality. So then, then we go on to talk about the general characteristics of form and the um, internal characteristics of form. So, sorry, excuse me. Oh, jeez, that must have been loud for everybody. It's because I have to cough into my elbow that I've got the mic caught up. Sorry. Anyway, so looking at these two divisions, we'll go into these now. Okay. So it goes on then to talk about the three specific characteristics of form: the translucent sense organs, the perceived objects of the sense organs, and the perceived objects of the mental cognitions. So the five types of translucent form that support the five senses consciousness belonging to the sense bases such as the eyes and causally derived from the four great elements are called sense organs. This sense organs is sometimes translated as sense powers. Um, so it's the five sense powers or the five sense organs of the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. And then the five objects, such as visible form, are the objects of their five congruent physical sense organs, are called form perceived by the sense organs. The sense organs associated with the consciousness are called homogeneous because they are congruent with the respective consciousness of the object. So this is referring to the second one, which is basically the objects that we perceive with our sense consciousnesses. So the visual form, the tactile form, the auditory form, the smell form, and the taste form. So these are the five. This is the second division, the perceived objects of the sense organs. And then those sense organs that are devoid of consciousness are called partly homogeneous because they eventually become congruent in the same way with those that are homogeneous. The form of the physical image that is referred to as a single point of concentration is called form, that is experimental field of the mental cognition. So this is referring to the third one, which is the perceived objects of the mental cognition. So to simplify that, the three divisions, the translucent sense organs are the five sense powers or the five sense organs of eye, etc. The perceived objects of the sense organs are the things that we see, smell, taste, touch, and so forth, the actual objects themselves. And the perceived objects of the mental cognitions are the objects perceived, the semcona, yeah, so perceived only by the mind, such as the concentration form, the form appearing to the mind of concentration that we referred to earlier. Okay. So, yeah, that's referring to the specific characteristics. Now to the general characteristics. Okay. Okay. So the first of these characteristics, all form impedes objects and always exists separate from such objects. This is the first general characteristic. So this is also a way you could say it is that all form can um, like abide, I guess. And this means that form will always be there. It's not destroyed. Like it's constantly changing, but it can't change into other form. Sorry, it can only change into other form. It can't change into anything other than form. So it will always be changing into another type of form. It can't change into anything else. So this is why it's stated that form is always abiding. Hmm. So what's meant by this is it can never change into another type of phenomena other than form, such as mind or a non-associated factor. It always has to transform into another type of form. So that's the first one of the three. Okay. Mhm. 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 Mm. So the next one, all form perceived by the sense organs and the perceived form of the sense organs exhibit increase and decrease. It's perceived by the sense organs and the perceived forms of the sense organs. And this is the second general characteristic. From the way I read the words, it's not as clear as when it was explained. Basically, it's the five sense powers and the object perceived by those five sense powers, or the five sense organs and the objects perceived by these five sense organs. These are always susceptible to increase and decline. Um, so, for example, we can take the human body. Obviously, it starts off very small, like some babies are as little as two kgs. Then they increase, and if you talk about me, I'm now 80 kgs. And then as you get older, then your weight goes down, and becomes less and less and less again. So all of these types of forms, as described here, are susceptible to that increase and decrease. Mm. Okay. So the through the low sensei, okay. Right, right. So then the third one, all form is capable of tactility such as contacted by a hand, a stone, a stick, a weapon, cold, heat, hunger, thirst, glad flies, bees, mosquitoes, wind, sun, scorpions, and snakes. Now, these are analogies of the way form can exist. So it can be contacted by a hand. This a stone here, literally, the Tibetan word is like a clump, like a clump of earth. Um, so a stick or as a weapon, like form can be a weapon, it can be cold, it can be hot, it can be like a clump, it can be like a stick, it can be hunger, it can be thirst, it can be this, the way uh, insects like mosquitoes and so forth bite us. It can be wind, it can be sun, it can be scorpions and snakes. Now, these scorpions and snakes are not referring to the scorpions and snakes themselves, it's referring to the body of those. So it's an analogy for a physical body. It's referring to the body of a scorpion or a snake, not the scorpion and the snake itself, because that's not form. So that's the three general characteristics of form. Right. So why are these three specific and three general characteristics of form posited? The question must be answered. Mhm. Mm. So these three characteristics, the translucent sense organs, the perceived objects of the sense organs, and the perceived objects of mental cognitions, these express the nature or the essence of form, right? So we can say that yes, these, as was explained, the first one, these waveforms can exist. This can be these five sense powers or sense organs, and the five objects of those sense organs, or the object of the mental sense perception. I'm going to look. Okay. Right. So this is a way you can understand this form is through these characteristics, these specific characteristics. So Zugzang Madinang Ladu. So all form is encompassed by these three. So this like pervades all form or encompasses all form. These three specific divisions. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, so then I'll read it out. But these general characteristics are terms that aspects that many forms possess, right? Like this impeding and hot and cold and so forth. Many forms possess these aspects or these characteristics, and that's why they're considered general characteristics, as it says in the text. By general characteristics, the term means those properties that are common to and shared by many types of physical phenomena. Thus, impeding objects refers to the property of many physical phenomena, whereby they display the nature of impeding and impede the presence of other physical objects. So, exhibit, increase, and decrease refers to the character of material phenomena that is subject to increment and decrement. Capable of tactility means that many physical phenomena are characterized as having the property of tangible contact, either external or internal. Okay. Hmm. 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 So when it now talks about the five sense objects, right? These are sometimes referred to as the five doors. And the reason they're referred to as the five doors is because this is the door becomes the entry point to the house. These objects are first perceived, or the first perception is by these senses. So just as you know, like you have the object of sight, visual, smell, hearing, taste, and tactile. Uh, these become these five objects, and then when you divide form into terms of there's a twofold division: outer physical form, that is the object of the five sense consciousness, and inner physical form, such as the five sense faculties. So the outer physical form is the objects that are perceived by the five sense consciousness, such as the visual form that we see, smell, the smells we perceive, the taste, the sounds we hear, and the tactile objects. And then there's the inner ones, which are the five sense organs themselves. So this is how you divide when we talk about the division of outer form and inner form. Shepa Zimbe Zug. Okay. So just to give an explanation of why they're referred to as inner and outer forms, so that which is held by a consciousness, sorry, form that is held by a consciousness is referred to as nangizu, as inner form. Form that is not held by consciousness is referred to as external form. So we'll go on to explain this. Mm, okay. Okay. Mm. Mm. Okay, right. Yeah. Right, right, right. Okay. So when we talk about this held or not, what do we mean by this? So held means that when this type of form is affected, it produces a feeling of happiness or unhappiness. You could say directly produces a form of happiness or unhappiness. So if our visual sense object is affected, and our vision declines, then that has a direct can produce a direct feeling. More, I mean, you can see this even more when you see our physical body. When our physical body's really in good shape, healthy, like then it produces like happiness, a type of feeling of happiness. Whereas if we have difficulties or problems, or with these this sense powers, then it produces this feeling of unhappiness. Whereas form that is not held, like a cup, for example, doesn't directly produce that feeling. Like if the cup's broken, it doesn't directly produce a feeling of unhappiness. It can be later, like can through some conception produce that, but it doesn't directly produce it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, here in our contembium, we shall follow Asanga's compendium, of Abhidharma, and present the classifications as form in four sections. So, then there's four divisions of form. So, the outer physical form, such as the five sense objects, the visual sense objects, and so forth that we talked about before. The inner physical form, the five sense faculties. So gonda di nipa di zugi keche, right? Zugi wanpo mara. Lasa. Wanpo na, keche mara. Okay. So, and the second one is the five sense faculties, which is the five sense organs, or the five sense powers. The mental object form, which we talked about before, is the third one. So that the objects perceived by the um, concentration and so forth. And then these are similar to what we had before. Then the fourth one is the elements that act as the causes to produce the other types of form. So such as like earth, fire, wind, water. These four elements. Mm. Okay, so now this gives us a broad overview. So now we're going to look into it more deeply. So we're looking at the the meaning of these sense objects. Mm. 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 Okay, so it goes on then to describe it. So the five sense objects, such as visible form, are posited as objects of the consciousness of the five sense doors. That we talked about those earlier. Thus, the objects that are perceived by the eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, and body consciousness are defined as visual form, sound, smell, taste, and tactile bases, respectively. Mm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So it goes on to then to talk about in the compendium of Abhidharma what is form. It is an object derived from the four great elements and constitutes the field of experience of the eye sense faculty. What is sound is an object derived from the four great elements and constitutes the perceived object of the ear sense faculty, and does the same for smell, taste, and tactility. So what's meant by this? When it talks about is an object derived from the four great elements, this basically means that these four great elements, which are form, are the primary cause for this object. And if the primary cause for the object is form, then the result will always be form. So if the main cause is form, then the result must be form. If the primary cause is mind, then the result of that must be mind, and so forth. So this is why form uh, always produces form and um, yeah, does not produce consciousness. Mm, okay, cause. Mm, mm, mm. So, also, this is why we say that virtue produces happiness and non virtue produces suffering. Because just as form always produces form and consciousness always produces consciousness, the cause always produces a concordant result. So the result is always concordant with the cause. So virtue will always produce happiness. And that's why we need to cultivate this virtue and also guard our minds from emotions like jealousy, anger, and so forth. Because if we do this, then that's how we can protect our mind and produce the causes that will result in happiness. Okay, so we move now on to visual form, page 94. To explain the topic of visual form, the perceived object of the eye consciousness is called visual form. So this perceived object of the eye consciousness is the definition of visual form. Um, so these are all objects perceived by the eye consciousness to be considered visual form. So color is one. So uh, blue is the object perceived by the eye consciousness apprehending blue, and yellow is the object perceived by the eye consciousness apprehending yellow. Let's just see what it says here. Is visual form such as blue or yellow color? It is classified. Visual form is twofold. Oh, no, it hasn't got into that. So this is these objects perceived by the visual consciousness, such as blue and yellow, because they're perceived by the respective. Um, okay. All right. So this sense object. So when it talks about visual form here, it would be more literal to translate it as visual sense object, and it makes sense when I explain it because it's referred to as a visual sense object because it's apprehended by the eye consciousness. So this like that which is apprehended by the eye consciousness is said to be a visual sense object. Um, I think it's well visible or visual. Okay. He's used visible here, so okay, that's fine. So we'll use visible sense object. Hmm. Okay. So when we divide form up, it has two divisions. It has the division of color and shape. So color is refers to hues, as it says here, like blue and yellow and so forth. Shapes refer to things like long and short, square and so forth. These are called shapes. And a house would be an example of that. Or white and yellow is hue is posited as its color, while its proportions and dimensions are covered as a shape. So for the example of house, the white or the yellow of the house is the color, is the hue that is posited as the color, and then the shape, the long and the short dimensions would be the shape. So when you divide it, then it's divided into primary colors and secondary colors. So first we go into the definition of color, which is suitable to be a hue. Is that how he's translated? Let me just find it. I think that's right. Oh, okay. Which is fit to be a primary hue. So, okay. He's put here fit to be a hue, suitable to be a hue. It's the same meaning. Yeah. So then, if we look at primary color, the definition is that which is fit to be a primary hue, and when it's differentiated, there are four blue, yellow, white, and red. Okay. So one reason these two are referred to as primary colors is because through mixing those, you produce then other colors, other secondary colors, such as the mixing of yellow and blue produces green. So this is why these are referred to as the primary colors, because by mixing those, you produce other colors, secondary colors. Okay. Okay. If fire, Goganda belong. When is what? Yeah, me mapo. And he saw super. And in jungle, Mambo Mara. Okay. Order. La. Mm. Mm. Okay. The second reason is that all form is produced by these four great elements, as we referred to before, and these four great elements are represented by these four primary colors. So earth is represented by the color yellow, water is said to be blue, fire is represented by red, and wind is white. So just as all form, are produced by these four elements. So these they can be referred to as primary elements, and that's why these colors, which are representative of these four elements, are said to be primary colors. So that's the second reason. Okay, now. Okay, so now we look at secondary colors. So that which is fit to be a secondary hue, we're on to the second paragraph now, is the definition of secondary color. When differentiated, there are 8 secondary colors. Okay, so when differentiated, the 8 secondary colors are identified as light, darkness, cloud, smoke, dust, shadow, mist, and sunlight. These colors are called secondary since it is in dependence on the combination of the 4 primary colors in varying measures that secondary colors emerge. Right, right. Mm, mm, okay. Mm, 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 mm. Okay. So it goes on to explain here that although there is no need for a secondary color to be any of these 8, the reason why these secondary colors are explained in terms of the 8 in the Abhidhamma text is this. For instance, the 4 cloud, smoke, dust, and mist can be like a horse or an ox of a magical illusion. It appears like a solid wall when viewed from a great distance, yet no such solidity can be seen when you observe it up close. So, to counter the possibility of misconception that they do not exist, all these 4 are listed. So, what's meant by that is that there's many colours, of course, like green and purple and gold and so forth, that are not included in these 8, yet they're still colours. So that much is obvious. So it's not that in order to be a secondary colour, it must be one of these 8. That's not. It's not like an extensive list of all the possible colours. What it's saying is the reason why these are posited is because there is a danger that can arise to these objects, that wrong views can arise to them because of what was stated, that when it's a long way away, there's the appearance of it, but when you get close to it, you can't actually perceive the objects anymore, right? These 4 like clouds and so forth. So therefore, it's possible for wrong views or wrong views to arise towards these objects, thinking that they don't actually exist. Um, so that's why these are posited, because the main point of Buddhism is to protect the mind from these wrong views. The point of the writing these texts is not to define what's a house and what's a horse and so forth. That's not the purpose. The purpose was to protect the mind from these wrong views. And that's why these objects were used, because it is possible to arise wrong views to the object because of the nature of them, and that's why these 4 were posited. Mm. Yeah. So, similarly, in respect to the remaining 4 light, darkness, shadow, and sunlight, these are mentioned to counter the misconception that light and so on do not exist separately from the site where they are perceived. So, Log yuna munbai yumane disopu kulum. Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. Okay, okay. Okay. Right, right. Okay. So the reason these are listed as secondary colors because there can be the misconception that once light arrives, then darkness no longer exists. So it's so even though it's not existent in the place where there's light, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist at all. It still exists, right? Just because it's not there right now doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That's why these are posited as secondary colors to protect from that misconception that just because light does not, because there's light in a place doesn't mean that darkness doesn't exist at all. It's still existent. It's just not there at that place. Uh, so yeah, Buddhists have held the belief that light is form for now 2,600 years. Right? From that time, they had this belief. Scientists are only just now coming to this belief very recently that light is form. But this is not a new belief for Buddhists. It's been held for 2,600 years. Yeah. Right. Right. So, there was a professor one time that came to the monastery very kind of happy to bring this new news that light is form. But, nobody was shocked or surprised at all by this information. We already knew that light was form, right? It wasn't any news to us. So, yeah, we found that very funny. Okay, so we'll stop here. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Kan de zoek die scheppen? Oh, okay. Right. Okay. Mm. So we'll stop here, but going forward, most of the people here also come or listen to the Wednesday class. Um, so that time we look at the mind and the nature of the mind. So now we're looking at the nature of the body. So it's good if you can meditate on this, the nature of the form. So this form, this physical form that we have, how does it come about, right? How is it? What is it? What is its nature? Also, is it connected with the mind? Does it follow the mind, right? Because, there's the belief out there that everything just comes down to the brain, so everything's physical. But check for yourself, is this body connected? Does it follow the mind? So it's good if you can do some analytical meditation on the nature of the form and the physical body. And if you want to read, then going forward, you can read about obviously shapes and then sound as well. Uh, Do it. Yeah. So they're the same sense organs and sense powers is the same word in Tibetan. So translucent sense powers. What do we say? Translucent form. Is that just the sense powers or is it the sense organs as well? So nanza di tanda kana de shure ro kanya sine zogi kare di wangbo nga inji yuna ni yure sense organ tang sense power. You know, perke chigma to yomare ro. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So yes, just this. Uh, this this comes down to it's a translation thing because what I said was in English sometimes it's translated as sense powers, sometimes it's translated as sense organs. But I said in Tibetan there's only one. There's wangbo, which literally means power. Literal translation is power. Okay, so okay, normally it's translated as power, but this is the actual meaning is soul. Is primary. It, so to understand the meaning from the Tibetan is primary. So this is this primary thing that makes our I function, our I consciousness function. Without that primary thing, then we wouldn't be able to see, right? So the, that's the meaning. This meaning of Wangpo, which is the would be translated as power. The meaning behind that is main. La. Mm. Oh, okay. Okay, so there's a difference between this Wang and Wang Po, uh, which would be in English. Okay, I'll give you the meaning. So sorry, because I can't think of two different words that exactly cover it. So Wang is that like it's almost dib Wang, like it's like a control almost, right? Like so this book is under my control or under my power, you could say. This Wang Po means main. So when you talk about the I sense organ or sense power, it means the main. In this context, this Wang Po means power. Sorry, means main, not power. Means primary or main. So I guess you could say the sense. Yeah. Okay. So the sense organ is closer, right? But if you yeah, you know, the sense organ, the mig sangma, the sense organ, right? Nanzo sense organ labda di mig sangma di sense organ re. Ni di desto marero. Me di mig di nangla di pakpa mare di nangla di kapo tang ngombo tang di sangma re. Yeah, di sangma sense organ re. Yeah. So yeah, just to clarify, however, often when we say sense organ, it means like the entire eye, but this main part is not the entire eye, it's one specific part, subtle part of the eye. Yeah, it's kind of maybe like the lens of the eye. Yeah, so when we say organ, it's not the entire eye. It doesn't mean the entire eye. So it's not exactly right. It's closer, but it's not exactly right because it would be more like the lens of the eye. right, would be the sense, main sense aspect. So we'll stick with the I'll try and stick with the translation of sense organ because that's what the book uses and that is the closest. But understand that it's not exact and you should try and understand what's meant behind it. Okay. Any other questions? Just answer. So this translucent form and the sense power does it cover both? Is that the same? Is that not the same question? But didn't you just answer that? They're the same. It's just a different translation for the same. I thought we just like if you want me to ask it again, but as far I just asked it. Okay. The tewa di drawa dawarero, the sense organ tan sense power chiparero, wangpo di ni wangpo re. So dire di niga wangpo sempre yumare no. Yeah. So the wangpo di tondak this. Mm. Mm. Okay. Right. Okay. Kande. Okay. So yigma yigma. Concentration. Okay. You know disugre. The someone. Okay. Translation. Okay. So just to clarify, sense organ and sense powers is just two different ways of translating the same term in Tibetan, which is wangpo, right? Which means primary, as we just discussed. To explain what it is in relation to the eye consciousness, it's a very subtle aspect of the lens of the eye. However, it's so subtle that it can only be perceived by the mind. It can't be perceived. Like scientists say they found it, but they haven't. It actually can only be perceived by the mind, of like in this concentration. It's the only way you can perceive it. You can't perceive it with a like an eye or another sense organ. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so it can only be perceived by mental consciousness. Di wangbo tsama, di wangbo nga, di tsama did it. Yeah. So all of these five sense, I don't want to use organs because it's not right. It's this main aspect of this sensory can only perceive the wangpo can only be perceived by the mind, by mental consciousness. So it's something like the form we perceive in a dream. It's some similar to that in some ways. So what the modern scientists perceive, they haven't been able to perceive this wangpo. Mm, mm, mm. So it's extremely subtle. So even this technology they have can't perceive this subtle type. So the microscope is so even this like technology that they have now cannot perceive this subtle type of form. Does that clarified it? Yeah. Uh, it say? How is it form or how is it tactile? Oh, all forms of the capacity of tactility. So no, no. The zogi chigitseni, sumpa di zog tamchi rekpare. Yeah, so pena di lakpa tang bungbo lasok paro. You know, kambo tang droko togna di kandi zugre, kandi tactile di kandi rekpare. Yeah, right. Okay, so they're considered tactility. They're not tactility in the sense that it can be touched by the hand. That's not necessary to be tactility. You don't have to be able to touch it with the hand. But this thirst arises through the absence of contact with water. And then when you drink, when the contact of water is made, that meets with water, then that thirst goes away. So through that tactility meeting with the water in a tactile way, then the thirst is removed. So the absence of this contact with water produces thirst. And when it meets it, then it goes away. So that's why it's referred to as tactile. Tactile. Okay. Mm. Okay, so to give it an analogy, just the smell is produced through, no, not smell, the sensation of smell, right, is produced through contact with that object, the object that we actually would refer to, the object of that sense, the smell itself. So when these meet, when the sense organ, the wangpo, meet with the object of smell, when they come, well, not meet, when they close, then you can smell. When they're far away, you can't have that smell. So it's the same with this thirst. When there's like far away from the water, then this sensation of thirst is produced. And when it's in close proximity, this throat sense organ, the wangpo in the throat, is in close proximity with the water, then the throat. Oh, sorry, but this time is tongue or throat? Tongue. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so there is no wangpo in the wangpo is in the tongue. So when this tongue sense organ or the wangpo meets with the water, that's when the thirst is removed. But when it's far away from the water, that's when the thirst is produced. Mm. So, so when the swangbo is in close proximity with the object, then this perception, the relative perception is produced of smell and so forth. It's the same way that when light is not there, is far away, then darkness is is there. But when light comes in, then the darkness is no longer there. Chinna Chupasho Garuda Namandala Kami